All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our Friday Tech Talks. Today we have one of our graduates, McKay Moore, and they're going to talk about their experience graduating from the Tech Academy and then landing a job and giving us some tips. Feel free to leave your questions in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. But thank you for being here, McKay, and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, it's good to see everyone, and I'm glad you guys can all make it. So I graduated from the Tech Academy, I think it was, let's see, last year in April, I believe. And so I'll kind of give, for this talk, I'll kind of give like a background of me, like my path going through the boot camp, and then I'll also talk about like how it was for the job search for me, like the interviews that I did. I'll talk about my job that I'm doing currently. And then I also want to, chat about sort of how we should, or how I think, at least for me, how you should view the job search and like really key things on like sort of mindset. I know they talk about that in the end course in the at the Tech Academy, so I'll kind of reiterate there. And then we'll do like a Q&A session where you can ask me questions and then I can respond and like maybe give you guys some feedback. So I'm originally from southeastern Idaho. I studied at a college called BYUI psychology. I was really interested in psychology, and after I graduated, I had applied for grad school to become a counselor. The thing is I'd always been interested in computer programming. And so I was like, okay, either I could go to grad school or I could, pursue computer programming. And so I decided that, if I went to pursue computer programming right off the bat, that I have more opportunities than I would in grad school. Because if I did grad school, then I'd become a counselor and then like start a private practice, and that would be like it, that'd be my story for the next like 20 to 40 years, right? And so I was looking for boot camps, and I was looking for in-person ones, and so I found one in Salt Lake, the Tech Academy. Obviously, they're out of Portland, but they had a like a satellite office there, and so I moved down to Salt Lake and lived on my brother's couch for like 6 months, and finished the camp. The funny thing is, I moved down to Salt Lake for the camp with the intention of attending in person, but I did the entire thing online. So so much for moving down to Salt Lake. But as for the Tech Academy, I really enjoyed the curriculum. I feel like they do a really good job at like continually reiterating those important things that as you develop into a software engineering role, that like there are certain concepts that you sort of need to have a fundamental understanding of, that sort of they become sort of blocks of understanding in your mind that you use to operate, like just the different software engineering and computer programming principles. So I think they did a really good job with that. And then I also liked that we were able to have interaction with multiple different technologies, and then that we learned front end and back end. As for like after my time at the Tech Academy into the job hunt, so I'll go ahead and share my screen. I'll show you what my resume looked like when I was applying, and then also like the jobs I applied to. Let's see, we'll share. Okay, do you guys see this, my resume here?
I'm sharing the screen right now. I'm not able to
Let's
see it yet.
Okay, there we are. That better? Okay. Perfect. Sweet. Yeah. So just like all you guys that have attended the boot camp, I have this role here as a software developer intern. I just described, the things that I did, and then I did my previous work experience. I had my project section here. Yeah, and this was my resume that got me the job at where I'm currently working at, or that I used to get the job where I'm currently working at. I had a skill section here. Um, yeah, nothing too
Sorry,
crazy.
McKay, if you
Oh
could
yeah,
make
go
it a
ahead.
little bit bigger, that'd be great.
Oh sure, yeah, my bad. Is this? How's that look?
Perfect. Looks great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I can share a link to this. I'll do that at the end of the talk. Yeah, so this is my resume that I had, like nothing too crazy. Um, I think we have a tendency to like over obsess about resumes and like, oh, like am I able to do that? Like all these things. But as I like kind of go further into the talk, um, hopefully we can kind of shift away from that mindset. And then this is my employee search log, the one that you guys have filled out if you attended the boot camp. So I applied to 60 positions. And I think I got to the next steps for 3 or 4 of those. I had a couple technical portions, um, and then the I had a technical portion with, let's see, I think it was like 12 or something at Go Engineer. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see. So 19. So this is where I'm currently working at, and I applied here, and then got to the job at Go Engineer. But I applied for over 60 positions, and then had 3 or 4 like next steps interviews, and then got the job for one. Okay, so I'll stop sharing my screen. Okay. Any questions on things so far? I know we'll do the Q&A at the end, but any questions before I kind of move on into like what my technical interview was like?
It
Okay.
looks like Serengeti has a question. Did you use the same outline for your cover letter? The
Yeah.
same
So
structure?
for my cover letter, I actually just foregoed all positions that required a cover letter. For me, it was all about getting as many applications out, and so like if I was able to get the speed apply, I know this probably isn't the greatest approach, but if I was able to get the speed apply on LinkedIn or quickly apply on Indeed, I did that. If they took me to an external website, I usually didn't fill out those. But the big thing was I was applying for a lot of positions. And then Robert, my job is on site 2 days of the week, but I'm remote for 3 of the days of the week. Yeah, so for the platforms that I use to find job listings, is I just looked on Indeed and I looked on LinkedIn, like the job search. My current tech stack at Go Engineer is I'm doing C# and .NET. We're doing .NET 6. We also have like front end stuff, you know, HTML, CSS. We do jQuery as well. And then we're also doing Bootstrap. So nothing too crazy. So things that were learned in the program. Yeah. I didn't come across any job scams. Yeah, so I don't know. I couldn't tell you. If they're asking for money, probably no. You know, don't continue with them. In jobs, you're typically the one that's paid, not them. So, yeah. Yeah, I'd love to tell you about the coding challenge. So that was actually pretty stressful for me at Go Engineer. So if you guys will remember from the Tech Academy, when you did the coding, I think we were in .NET 4, and we were using something called Model First for designing the database stuff. So you'd like, I don't know if you guys remember this at all, but you'd like have this little UI where you create your model there, and then you update changes into the database. And for that, I was using for the for the Go Engineer technical interview portions. I was doing something in .NET 6, and we were doing code first. So you build out your class. So it's similar to what we did in Python. You build out your class, and then you're pushing things to the database. So I was in .NET 6 in like Entity Framework Core, and so all the technology that I was dealing with was like similar to the previous technology, but it was new. So like I hadn't dealt with any like dependency injection. I think Framework Core 6. I can't exactly remember, Sherry. Um, yeah. So what my technical the project portion. So I had like a project interview, or sorry, let's see. We'll go from the beginning. So I had an initial screening with HR, and then I had an initial phone interview with the software engineering manager, and that was like pretty much step 2 with HR. Like we didn't really talk about technologies or anything like that. It was just like another behavioral interview. He then presented me the project, a small project that I did, and for the project, what that entailed was I was working in .NET 6, and I was consuming an API, and then saving the API to the database, as well as presenting the information like in a CRUD format. So you can add new stuff and delete it and things like that. Um, and so and so I hadn't done anything with that, so I spent like 10 hours the next day working on it, and multiple more hours. It's like eating tons of ice cream and drinking tons of diet soda to keep me fueled. So, but I was able to meet the project requirements, and they really liked it. And then I had an additional interview with with uh, with the software engineering manager and then the senior engineer, and they asked me questions about C sharp. They asked me questions about jQuery. They just kind of asked questions and engaged my depth of understanding and the various technologies that that they were using. Yeah, and then after that, I had things went well, and then I had a final interview. Um, so my initial compensation, um, they initially presented me with $70,000 a year, and then I negotiated to 75, and then at the end of the year, I was bumped up to 80. So I'm currently making 80 now. Let's see. Do you have any more questions before we go on, or anything more that before we talk about like job search and like mindset and stuff? Let's see. Okay, so Brett Morris, which job titles were you looking for specifically? So in the Tech Academy program, you'll remember that you do, unless things have changed, you do Python in the Django framework first, and then you do C# in the .NET framework. And because of that, you know, you get your first exposure to MVC and things like, and like a web framework in Python, and then you get your second exposure in a different language in C# and .NET. And so because of that, I feel like I felt more comfortable in C#. And then with C#, I also like that it is, I like the type system where it's like very explicit instead of Python where, you know, it's implicitly typed. And so I like that. And then, so I decided I was just going to look for .NET positions, and then apply that to as many as I could. For the .NET positions, I applied for anywhere from junior entry-level dev to like mid-level dev, and then some positions I was applying for like senior dev roles, because like in the end, like you only need to get your first job, right? Like that's the name of the game. So like applying to a position, especially if you're doing the quick apply stuff on Indeed or LinkedIn, like it's, you just got to get your foot in the door. So I applied to tons of spots, and like they talk about in the final portion of the Tech Academy, is that, you know, there aren't many openings for junior devs, like because they're often looking for someone that could like really fill in the role. They've already had some experience, but even though those positions aren't there, that like they still need junior devs, right? So the role I applied for, they weren't looking for a junior developer. but they interviewed me and they liked me enough that they're willing to like allow me to hop on board for the team. Um, and so yeah, it's all about just applying to a ton of positions, because um, like even if you don't feel super confident in doing it, or if you don't feel like you're like there yet, just apply for positions. I know for me, like it does feel weird that you're applying for positions. Like before this job, I'd only worked part-time ever because I was in school and stuff, and so I've never made more than like $40,000 a year. Um, so it was like a big jump, and I was like asking for a salary position, right? It's kind of weird. Um, but yeah, like when you're applying for positions, like the worst they can say is like no, or like we're not interested. Like so, and the best they can say is, well, yeah, we'll give you the job. So like, it's really not like I know we have this fear that we shouldn't like apply or like present or like apply to positions that we seem unqualified for, but like it is pretty much free to do, you know, like there's no cost to us. Like the worst case scenario is that they don't give you the job and you're already in your worst case scenario. You already don't have the job. So it's like, you might as well do it. Okay, let's see. I'll answer some more questions. Let's see. Uh, Virginia, so as for the projects that would be good to show, I didn't display any of my projects. They had looked on my GitHub and went through and looked on my personal website that I made at the Tech Academy. But beyond that, they didn't look at any other of my other projects. Yeah. So I mean, as to present, I would just say you need projects that like show your current capability. There's like tons of, you have your Tech Academy projects that you did. You could also look online. I mean, like one of the most popular like software engineering videos is like 5 projects you can do, that like they kind of walk you through the projects. So, I mean, like I think you can have really impressive projects or just have regular projects, but like the biggest thing is applying for jobs. Micah, so I use the same I use the same resume for all positions. I didn't vary my resume at all. For me, it was all about I just need to get like as many things. I just need to apply to as many positions as I can, because it was all a numbers game for me. So like maybe that's just because I'm lazy, but I didn't change up my resume. I didn't do any cover letters. If you guys are wanting to do cover letters, I would honestly just have you like, you should just use ChatGPT to write the cover letter for you. Let's see. So Robert, I wasn't building any of my own apps after the boot camp. So I just was applying to a lot of positions. I was like consuming some software engineering content, but I was just, if you have it like probably like more than a month, I'd that like from the camp to like your first position, I think it would be good to continue coding. But yeah, because you want to stay up on your skills. But yeah, I think just applying to jobs is like the #1 thing. Stefan, or Stefan, I don't know. Is the training from the Tech Academy enough to get the job? Yeah, I'd say. I mean, I'm here. One of the questions they asked me in the initial interview is like, day one, what value could you bring to the company, kind of thing, given your current status. And I've worked at McDonald's before, and so talked about working with other people. And then at McDonald's, we used like this software for printing like numbers and like our stats for the hour or whatever. So I'd say, I've had experience with UI. I've used computers all my life, so there's that. And so, yeah, so like the biggest thing is like getting your foot in the door, because you have the fundamental understanding to be able to begin to perform in like a software engineering environment. So it's all about getting into that environment so you can continue to grow and develop. I'd say probably after 2 to 6 months, I felt like decently comfortable, like day-to-day job wise. And now I feel like really good. Like my current boss gives me a lot of autonomy. as I'm like doing projects and things like that. And then I come to him with like design decisions, like, okay, like I can solve this problem like this way or this way or this way. I'm leaning towards this way. What do you think? Kind of thing like that. Yes, I will also provide the link to the website, Virginia, or my website. Let's see. So let's see, how long was it until? So if you'll remember, in the last section of the Tech Academy, like I think it's the last module you do, you begin applying to jobs, and you don't graduate until you have like applied to like 30 jobs, I believe. And so I think it was like somewhere between like I think it was around like 3 weeks or something, 2 to 3 weeks. That from like I finished up there to working. And the nice thing was also that the interview process, they were really in need of people, so their interview process was really quick. Like I think I had my 3 interviews within like the span of like a week and a half, and then like started like the following week. Like it was really quick. Let's see. Yeah. So let's see. I think I'd also like to talk more about sort of mindset and job search stuff. Do you keep applying even during the week and a half interview process? Yeah. So Serengeti, I would just say unless you've signed the document that says you're working there, you keep applying to jobs. Because I mean, you don't have the job yet, and so you kind of want to always be in the process of interviewing, or like have an interview or a week or every 2 weeks. Because if you like start this interview process and be like, oh, this is the one, like, and then nothing ends up happening, then you're back at square one and you don't have any interviews in the pipeline. So I would say like the biggest thing, number one thing, is that you're applying for jobs. Good beginner resource to learn more about .NET. Sherry, I would say, so I would also, so .NET is a framework that can be done in different languages. So I do in C#, and that's what the Tech Academy teaches in. So if you go to w3schools.com, they're super good for entry-level beginner stuff. Yeah, so they're super good for entry-level stuff. And then Microsoft has tons of documentation for .NET stuff. They have tutorials, like tons of resources. Serengeti, I didn't have a weekly goal. I had a daily goal. I think the Tech Academy also gives you the goal for like 10 applications every day. And so I don't think I hit that every day, but for most days I did 10 applications. That's what I shot for. Okay, so I also want to talk about like mindset and like how to think about your job search. So it can be like like the biggest, most common thing in like the software engineering world is like imposter syndrome. You're like, all these people have all these strong technology pasts, and I'm just like coming in off a boot camp, like I don't feel like I am a software engineer or something like that, or I feel like I'm some sort of imposter that like they think I can do what, like they think I know what I'm doing, but like I really don't know what I'm doing, kind of thing. And so that can kind of be like crippling, like because you feel like, oh, if I don't feel like I'm ready, then I shouldn't be applying for jobs, right? And that's like the biggest thing. The issue with that is like your personal level of competence, or your understanding of your like personal level of ability, like doesn't actually get you the job. Like they don't ask you like or I guess what I'm trying to say is like your understanding doesn't get you the job. It's their understanding of your ability that gets you the job, right? And so your ability pretty much in an entry level role is like, I have some fundamental understanding of these technologies and I'm working to grow and develop. Like your commitment to learn is the biggest thing that will give you a job. And honestly, that was one of the things that they were really impressed with for me, was like my willingness and desire to learn. I had completed the boot camp in like 4 months or so, and then like previously in my psychology degree, I completed that in just a little over 2 years. And so they were really impressed with my ability to learn. And so that was the big thing that I think got me over the edge, where I got the position. Um, so as for more advanced .NET concepts, I think right off the top of my head, just learn about like inheritance, the different keywords in C#, what all those mean, and then dependency injection. Oh, nice. Psychology is great. Okay, so I also want to take some time to talk about like a concept in psychology called reframing. Okay, so this is a really powerful thing, and I think it's distinctly powerful in this context of looking for jobs. So say you have a conception for a situation, right? Say something like not great happened. I'll give you an example. So during my job hunt, you sometimes will do like these competency tests. So it wasn't on like programming specifically. It was more of like logic and things like that. And I was kind of nervous about it, as you are with these tests like this. And so, and right before I started the test, it was late, and then I had like ate like an entire pizza from Little Caesars because I was so nervous, and like obviously like things weren't like going great because I was nervous. So my diet wasn't great during that time. But so like I was like super carb loaded and I couldn't think at all. So I get into this test and I just absolutely bomb it, right? Like I didn't have the capability for abstract thought. Like I was like done, and so I like did not do well. I got the email after, like no surprise, like they weren't going to continue working with me in the interview process. And like I have another experience, similar thing. Like it was a different time of the day, but like I had like a JavaScript portion and a C# portion. Like the funny thing is I felt like a lot more comfortable with C#, but I failed the C# portion and passed the JavaScript portion. So like a couple experiences where it's like, oh, like I wasn't even good enough to continue in the interview process, right? Like I've had like an initial phone screening, wasn't good enough to take the next step. And so that's like a pretty negative way of thinking of those situations, right? Like you have this experience with the interview, and your like belief that you pull from that is that I'm not good enough, right? I shouldn't continue, like these negative things. So you can think of it that way and kind of take away from those experiences that was a negative thing, or you can choose to view them in a positive light. So for those situations, instead of saying, oh, like, I had this interview, I wasn't even good enough to pass the initial screening, and so like, who am I to be applying for these jobs, right? Like I have these like things that I've learned, but like, it's like what is it really? I wasn't able to demonstrate competency even to this degree, right? Or you can say, okay, I have had these experiences. I'm understanding more about the interview process, right? So I've learned that, okay, I probably shouldn't take these tests like 11 o'clock at night after I've eaten an entire pizza, right? Because I don't think well during them. Or okay, for the C# portion that I failed, maybe I need to learn a little bit more about C# in those areas where like I didn't feel like I was doing great, or whatever. So instead of viewing these situations as a negative experience that you're developing these negative beliefs about yourself, you switch around and say, okay, how can I take this experience and improve the next time I interview? Because my goal is to get a software engineering job, and so each step along that path is a step, a learning step for me to get the job. Like that's my end goal, and so I'm just going to work iteratively until I get the job, right? And so each interaction doesn't have to be one where it's like, oh, like great, I failed the interview again. It's, oh, okay, so this is how they do the interview process. I've learned a little bit more about what they're looking for, and I can focus specifically on those areas that will get me to the next step next time, right? So so that's the whole idea of reframing, is that we're taking the situations that we experience, and instead of just viewing them from a completely negative light, we decide to sort of shift our perspective or think about the situation differently, and to view them in a more positive way. And when you do that, it's really, really powerful because you can often feel an emotional change within yourself, like immediately. Instead of thinking, oh, like I'm not good enough, oh, I won't be able to do this, like who am I to spend all this money to do this program, and then like I flopped it, you know? Instead of thinking about it like that, to say, okay, like great, like I have another learning experience that will prepare me better next time when I have an interview. And so that's like the big thing that helped me, and then I think also helps, you know, in all areas of your life. So let's see. So I think we could open up to the like live Q&A. And then maybe I'll take some time later. So obviously, software engineering is a big, like ability-heavy industry, but it's also like you have to know quite a bit as well. And so maybe we could talk a little bit about like what I do for my knowledge management system and how I continue to stay learning. I don't know if you guys would be interested in that at all. But yeah.
Yeah, of course. We'll be very interested. Um, I can either open the chat right now if anybody has questions and you want to ask yourself without typing it into the chat. So it's on right now. But I feel like there's some questions in the chat as well already. Let's see.
Okay, Brett Morris, how did you approach your salary negotiating? For that one, so we talked to, so I kind of blundered initially, is that usually you're not supposed to give your number first, but I was like so excited, so I was like, oops. But despite that, like I just kind of looked at the range that they were making, or that software engineers were making in Utah, and then I just said, I'm looking for like something in that bracket, right? Which is pretty reasonable too. So they initially offered me 70,000, and then after that, let's see, I think I had a phone call. I pretty much said like it's really gracious, like, and then I don't remember the exact wording, but I just said something along the lines of, let's see, I can't remember exactly how I did it, but I watched like a lot of negotiating videos that day before. So I just asked for 75 instead and said, look, if you're able to make 75 work, I'll be able to accept the offer today, something like that. And then he had a call with another person, called me back and said, yeah, 75 is good. I'll send you the paperwork. Let's see, what more are more advanced .NET concepts? So for .NET specifically, I think it's important to learn about Lambda expressions. If you learn about LINQ, that's really good, LINQ. Dependency injection, like if you understand Lambda expressions, LINQ, dependency injection, as well as like the fundamental concepts of C#, like you're in a good spot. Let's see. Common questions. So for me, I can't remember exactly a ton, but what I did in preparing for like the technical interview questions is I just looked online like 50 C# interview questions, like grabbed all those, and then made sure that I could answer each one like reasonably well. Okay, Robert, I've had my first job, but it didn't work out. How would you attack things after that? I would say just continue on the grind. Like there'll be a position that will work for you, and even if it didn't work out, instead of being like, oh, like great, like just reframe it to be like, okay, I've had some experience. Now just on to the next step, right? Because like the reality is, if you continue desire to learn more and like get that job and you're incrementally improving, like there's no way that you won't eventually get to that spot, right? If you're continually interviewing, if you're continually learning, if you're continually improving, like there's no way that eventually you won't get there. So yeah, so I think reframing is really powerful. So I think, Robert, that's what I'd recommend. And then also, I think something that's really important is to be like really honest with yourself and try your best to figure out, okay, like don't be down on yourself, but try your best to figure out like what things didn't work out with that previous situation, and then attack those things directly. Like be honest and say, okay, let's see, like what could I have learned better, or what could I have known better, or rather, what could I have known that would have better like enabled me to perform in that situation, and then focus on those things. Let's see. So Micah, I only had my projects on my resume, though I did have a link to my website on my LinkedIn, and those had like brief descriptions of my projects on my website. So as far as building projects, do you think, so this is from Ethan, as far as building projects, do you think the topic of the project matters or more so the tech? I'm building a project with 2 different Pokemon APIs. That's pretty techy, maybe more so than a regular site, but I'm worried about the professionality of the topic Pokemon. No, I think that's good. Like if you're working with APIs, that's great. Like consuming APIs and then like moving information into the database is like a lot of what I do. So I think that's fine. And often like any ways you can connect with the interviewers, like as software engineers go, most of them know about Pokemon, and like of those people, a lot of them are interested in Pokemon. So they might get excited that you've done something with Pokemon, and like that's kind of an in, you know. So I wouldn't worry about that as long as it like shows your ability. Like, yeah, I wouldn't worry about the topic too much. Did you build any personal projects other than the ones you created through the bootcamp? No, I didn't. So Sherry, like what I'm currently working on at my job, I could tell more about the day-to-day at Go Engineer, and then maybe my knowledge management system. How does that sound? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah. So at Go Engineer, so we have like 2 levels of engineers, right? We have engineer 2s and engineer 1s, and I'm an engineer 1. So the senior mid-level to senior engineers are those engineer 2s. And right now, actually, I'll talk more about what Go Engineer is and then what I do specifically in Go Engineer. So Go Engineer is a software sales company, and we sell SolidWorks primarily, and other design solutions. So like 3D CAD software, so 3D modeling, but think 3D modeling for like mechanical engineers. And so I don't work on SolidWorks, like that's owned by a different company. But I work on the systems that the employees use, as well as the website. So we have a website, like marketing stuff, you know, describes the information and for the products we sell. And I work on the website, and I also work on internal marketing tools. Oh, can you guys see me? Okay, my screen just went black. Yes. Okay, so I work on the internal marketing tools and things like that. And so most of the other senior engineers are on one project, but we have a lot of small projects, and I'm over like all the small projects. And so what my day-to-day looks like, we have like, so the project design methodology that we use, at least for me, is closer to Kanban, where you have like tasks that you have, and you move them from like not worked on or not even started to like in testing to release to production, something like that. And we don't do, at least my team, or at least the things I work on, we're not doing like agile sprints where we have like 2 weeks of a period where we're like focusing on just these things. Just because for me, like the project requirements are changing so often that like we couldn't plan 2 weeks in advance what I'm going to be doing like in a week, right? So yeah, Sherry. So we're usually like as agile frameworks go, like you will probably never find a company that's like just using one framework or is like 100% like agile or 100% like Scrum and things like that. And so like we have another team that does some more of a like a Scrum, like it's closer to Scrum but not quite Scrum. And then I just like do Kanban pretty much, to where like we have like the things I need to work on, and then I work on those. And so yeah, so my day-to-day looks like working on those individual tasks that I'm on. Typically, or I guess recently, I've been working on integrating our HR, like our information with HR to our information in Active Directory, which is like a directory of all the employees. It's a Microsoft tool that like helps with keeping, or helps with like uh, like accessing things in the organization. So if you log into your account, then you have access to all the tools in the organization. It also has personal information. So I've been doing that recently. I get moved from project to project pretty often because a lot of the projects I work on are smaller. So today, yeah, like I was working on that. I had a meeting this morning where I was working. I was interacting with someone with our business analytics team because I'm building out a project for incorporating like numbers presentation, and we're using Power BI to display the like analytics in the organization. And so I was working on that. Yeah, let's see if we have any other questions on. Did you get any training when you started work, or were you expected to hit the ground running? So I didn't get really any training, but they gave me tasks that were like according to my like ability at the time, right? So when I got in at Go Engineer, like they helped me set up all my environments. So as a software engineer, like you have like production systems where all the customers are using, or whoever your users are, and then you also have the areas where you'll be working to test your code and build your code. And so those are called your like local environments. And so I like got all those prepared. And then my first task that I did was to upgrade like from .NET, I think we were on .NET 4 to upgrade to .NET 6. So across the projects in the organization, I worked on like upgrading that. So I was working with like NuGet Package Manager to upgrade those, and then like I'd upgrade everything and then like run it and see all the errors that happen and then like fix each of those errors, and then like just kind of iteratively do that. So yeah, so I was just given tasks that were like within my ability, and then like slowly built up as I learned, and as I learned at work, and then as I learned at home as well. So uh, da, 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 da. So knowledge management. So I don't work on any knowledge management systems. Um, the HR project is more just like getting employee information like in the right places it needs to be within the organization on the various systems that we use. So we use Azure DevOps for like, we're like a completely Microsoft organization. So we use Azure DevOps. We use like Azure Portal. Like, yeah, that's like, or like the whole, that's what we use, like our suite. Yeah, so we do code reviews. So when I'm working on a project, of course, we have like the tasks that involve the project, and like, so I'll create a new branch, I'll resolve the task or solve the task, and then I'll push that up and then create a pull request, and then my manager will look it over and like give any comments he has, like if he wants me to change it at all, and then that will be merged in, and then I test it in our other environments, and then like once every few weeks, we release to production. So all the changes that we've built but haven't been released to the customers / users are then released.
Great. I have a question. So
Uh-huh.
it seems like you learn a lot throughout the boot camp, and because of that, you were able to really just get into your job or your position right away.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tips for people who are still in the boot camp? Any study tips on any of the courses, maybe?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so for studying, um, I I wouldn't spend too long on each of the like, if you don't get an idea the first time, I wouldn't spend too long agonizing over it when you're going through the program, because how the program is set up is you're interacting with these ideas over and over and over again. So if you don't have it like conceptually the first time, I think that's totally fine, because as you continue through the program, you'll pick on it eventually. And if it isn't the case, then I would just make a list of those things that like, oh, okay, I don't understand, um, and then attack those. But you want to keep balance of like making speed in the program, getting that experience with building things, while also making sure that like you're still like you're not like chat GPTing everything, that you're like having a fundamental understanding of what you're doing. Let's see.
I have another question.
Yeah,
Do you, or as a company, do you guys use ChatGPT? If not, do you use it to study or for work?
yeah. So I use ChatGPT so much. It's an excellent study tool because it's like you have a mentor right there that is like excellent in the thing you're doing. So obviously there are limitations to ChatGPT, but like in terms of like understanding concepts and things like that, ChatGPT is really good at explaining things. And also, if you presented a problem, it can be a good like first source. Like if I'm dealing with an issue that I don't understand, like typically I'll go to ChatGPT before I go to Google. And so yeah, it's a really powerful tool. And then it's also really good for for like studying. If you don't understand something, you can ask ChatGPT to explain it to you. And then you could also say, okay, from this definition that you give me, I don't understand these parts. Could you reiterate that or describe it in a different way? So yeah, ChatGPT is great. I haven't used Google's Bard, but I've heard that's also good. So let's see. So Brett, I used, I think it was the full stack. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you guys do have a lot of different boot camps. I didn't think about that. But yeah, so I used the full stack one. So we learned HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Python, and the Django framework, C# and the .NET framework, and then we're off like to the races kind of thing.
It's called the Software Developer Bootcamp.
Okay.
Just if you're curious.
Yes, I did that one. I didn't attend any meetups. I just like pretty much for Sherry, I just do Chrome. Mozilla Firefox is good for front end stuff. Right now, like I'm a full stack developer, but most full stack developers are much stronger in the back end than they are in the front end. There's this meme I saw recently. It's like that meme where you have the horse and like half of the horse is drawn really well, and then half of it is like, you know. And so the back end of the horse was drawn really well, and the front end of the horse was like drawn like a 2-year-old drew it. And that's kind of like most full stack developers grasp. They do really great in the back end, and they can like fart around in the front end and they can eventually get to it, but they're not super insane understanding because technologies and understanding of front end are different than technologies and understanding of back end. Let's see, what are used for testing? So we don't, we just like, so we're like a smaller company, or we have a smaller let's see, our development team is pretty small. So like there are like 6 total developers and for the company. So we just test ourselves. Like we don't have a QA team or anything like that. Yeah, so we use Azure DevOps, Virginia. That is a pipeline tool that helps you to be able to build and release your changes. So that's what we do. Any advice for front end only? So right now I'm actually working on like learning front end more. There's this one guy on our team who's like an absolute whiz at front end. I was like working on this issue for like a couple hours, and then we peer programmed for like 5 minutes, and he was like, "This is the issue." So it was great. So I'm wanting to learn more. So for me, I really enjoy a deep understanding of things, and so I'll just go, and maybe this is a good transition to like how I manage learning and manage knowledge. Since let's see, so I'll go ahead and share my screen. So this is a tool called Anki, ANKI. It's a desktop application as well as like a mobile application. And I'll share my screen so I can show you guys. Entire screen. Okay. And so this is what it looks like. So it's a flashcard app. And if you'll I don't know if you guys, so in psychology of learning is like a big thing. And so one of the most powerful techniques for learning is called spaced repetition. And this is where you have an experience with this thing, or you've learned it initially, you wait some time, and then try to recall, actively recall, or do that thing again. And that helps really ingrain in your mind that, like, this thing, right? So the more you practice, right, the better you are. The more you recall a thing, the more likely you are to remember it. And so this tool helps you automate the learning process for that. So you have these decks of cards. So if I study now, I'm presented a question for a card that I've done previously. Like, we'll show the answer, and then, like, so you have a question, right? Try to think of the answer, and then if you get it wrong, you, like, go again or whatever. But if you get it right, you, like, say that was easy, right? And if you'll notice here, I have different dates between beneath these. So what this software does is, oh, let's see, it's pretty small, isn't it? My bad. Oh, it did not make it bigger the way I wanted to make it bigger. Okay, so the big idea with this one is that I have these cards that I've built, and then I'm reviewing these cards. And if I review the card, or if I remember it, then it goes out into the future, right? There's time, it goes out into the future from the time that you'll review it again. And if I don't understand it well, then it will systematically bring it back. See right here, I don't know if you can see that, but this says 10 minutes. So this means that if I don't get it, or if I didn't understand, then I'm going to see it again in the same study session. So what this does is, if you recall it well, then it sends it out into the future further and further each time you recall it correctly. And if you don't, you'll review it again. So what this does is that it can ensure that it helps you build a fundamental understanding of the knowledge that you're trying to, like, to understand, right? So if you don't understand it, you'll review it again until you reach understanding. And if you do understand it, it, like, puts it out into the future for the next time you'll review it. So each day I do this, where I'll review my cards to help recall and ensure that I have understanding. And then, like, with those cards I don't understand, I'll review again until I understand them. And with those cards that I do understand, they'll be put out into the future. So this takes me about, like, probably 15 minutes every day. But it helps me maintain, like, ability over, like, a vast quantity of knowledge. So, like, I have all these cards on, like, C#. So I have like 500 cards here, or JavaScript, computer science. Well, that's computer science. I have, like, a lot of cards. So I build these decks and then review them so I can maintain knowledge over them. So that kind of ties back to what I was talking about with knowledge management. So what I like to do is I go through documentation on something that I'm learning, say jQuery. It's a front-end JavaScript framework that helps. It's like, if you guys know what query selector is, where you can use an ID to grab a particular element. It's like query selector, but, like, on steroids. Like, it could do a lot more. So I use these cards, and like, I like to build my understanding of jQuery. So I'll go to w3schools.com or whatever, and go through the entire jQuery documentation and try to capture as many things as I can on those cards. Like, I'll do method names, like, what does the method do, just so I build that understanding. So when I am writing code, I don't have to look up, oh, what is this one? Like, I already know what methods I need to use in order to accomplish a thing. And as you understand, and like, it goes from, like, surface level understanding to, like, deep understanding, then, like, it becomes sort of like talking. Like when I'm talking, I'm not thinking about all the words that I need to say. Or if you guys have learned another language, you don't. It's like, what you get to a point where it's less conscious, right? I don't have to think about it. I just know what needs to happen here. And so that's what I do. My software engineering manager has remarked that I've learned a lot, and my speed of learning is much faster because of this Anki, I believe, much faster than, like, what he would have expected me to be at. So that's a really important thing. But with all learning, if you haven't gotten a job yet, I would say your highest priority is to apply for jobs, followed closely, and, like, you need to keep learning and to keep, like, practicing your skills. Okay, any questions on that specifically?
Yeah, so is that a program you made yourself or?
No, so that's just a I can so it's called Anki. Um, I just sent that in the chat. Uh, okay, and I can send a link for it. AnkiWeb.net, I believe.
'Cause that's a pretty cool tool for learning. I don't think
Oh
so.
yeah, it's incredible. Like I'm like an Anki evangelist now. Like I've told my family about it. Like this is so good, just because
No,
how
that's
powerful it is.
awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure all of us nowadays with so many social media platforms, our attention span is just so short and we have a hard time memorizing everything.
Right?
So this can definitely be an amazing tool for make sure we not only remember things, but make sure we learn it fundamentally.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because on every other previous learning experience, I have it's really difficult to continually maintain competence over that thing unless you're very like deliberate about it. And so this makes it super easy because you just have to show up every day and review your cards. And as long as you're adding more cards, like you're continually learning. So it makes it automates the most annoying part about learning is that maintaining that knowledge across time. So I sent that in the chat. Yes, I'll start sharing all the links now. Uh, so this is my website as it currently stands. I haven't changed it since the initial, like I haven't updated it since I found a job. And I was just using the GitHub like free website hosting. And then I'll also share my resume, and I can also share my LinkedIn as well. There's my LinkedIn. Here's my resume. Okay, so we're getting close. Is there any other final questions?
And if you guys ever have any questions, oh, looks like there are some.
Okay, Stefan, I would say if your bootcamp doesn't include Python, don't worry about it. You can learn a little bit if you want. I would focus more on the technologies that you're currently working with and how they apply to the jobs that you're going to get, and then apply, apply, apply. Um, any advice on getting prepared practice for technical interviews? So Anki was a big tool for me when I finished the program. So I didn't learn about Anki until after. I wish I'd learned about it at the beginning because I could have started building that as I was going through the program. But yeah, so I just look for questions online for technical interviews and then study from those. And thanks, Ethan. Yeah, I found a website that was similar to that. I was like, that's a cool color scheme, so I kind of stole it.
And if any of you have any questions, feel free to message McKay on LinkedIn
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
Any final thoughts, McKay? You gave us so many amazing tips, and also I really like the tool you just shared with us.
Mm-hmm.
But any final thoughts you have?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to like if you're at a job where you finish your boot camp or in your boot camp, the biggest thing is just to apply as many jobs as you can. Like because like if you are wanting to continue learning, like the the environment of a software engineering role is the place to do it in because it's like the experience for what you're wanting to do, right? So if you want to develop your skills, like finding a job in that way is the best thing. Yeah. And then I'd say another thing, so applying for jobs and then make sure you're doing things daily that are bringing you closer to your goal. Like the power of small daily habits, like in the long run, is huge, right? And so, yeah, like that's why I review Anki every day. I try to add 10 cards every day, so that ensures that I'm always learning something new. Yeah.
No, great. Thank you for all the advice. Also, I'm sure you guys know that we're recording this, and then I'm going to share it later today or on Monday on our YouTube channel. So here's the link where you can watch this back. It'll be under the Tech Talk playlist on our YouTube channel. And then also next week we have a Tech Talk. It's actually one of our graduates who's working as an instructor. You guys might be familiar with him if you're still going through the boot camp. His name is Wes. Here's the Tech Talk. He's actually going to be discussing how to use game development to continue learning code. So it might be a very interesting talk. So definitely join in. And thank you everyone for joining in today. And thank you, McKay, for an awesome tech talk. And I hope you guys have an amazing Friday and a great weekend.
I have one more thing I forgot. So we are looking for a junior engineer right now. So if you want to send your email to V Karmanov, we just recently opened, or sorry, not send your email, send your resume to V Karmanov. He is my engineering manager. So if you're interested in it, similar to what I'm doing, like, because same company, you know.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
I think we do have a couple remote engineers, so I think remote is an option. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And this is why you guys should always join our tech talks. You never know when there's a job opportunity, right?
Virginia, it's a full stack position. We have a pretty small team, so you kind of have to be across the whole spectrum.
Well, let us know if there are any questions. If not, this is pretty much the end. And like I said, I hope you guys have a great Friday and a great weekend. Thank you all for joining. Thank you so much, McKay.
Yeah, of course.
Really appreciate it.
Happy to.
Thank you.